All right, so we tried again. Let's see what this does. Still no picture. What the heck? I don't know what's going on, guys. Sorry about this. I'm not sure what is going on. It says I'm working from here. Let me look at my phone and see what it shows. Don't understand this. And now it's buffering again. Well, it looks like one of them's working. Okay, so this is the one that's working now. I don't know why it's not showing. I don't know why it's not showing on the studio, but it seems to be working because I've got it running on my TV above me, and it seems to be working fine. So we're gonna go with this. All right, so I apologize everybody for all that. I don't know what happened. Crazy. I know there's been some sound issues in the past. My neighbor cued me in on that a couple days ago, and I think I've got that fixed. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I don't see what's going on in the studio, but you can see it's still playing, so I'm gonna go with it. Yes, there was some sound issues when I would go to desktop to show you some slide pictures. The sound would get all crazy, so I think I've got that cured. And right now I don't even have a chat up. Let me see if I can put a chat up so I can see what you guys are saying. Controls, chat. All right. No, it looks like that's not working either. So I'm assuming that it's working, and I can't see your guys' comments, so I'm just gonna kind of go with this here. I think it's working to a certain degree. So like I said, we had some sound issues. I think I got that fixed. I wanted to go over some kind of, I guess, the tech issues. The tech talk tonight was going to be about oiling systems, but now it's killing me that we don't have the chat open. Let me go back one more time and see if I can get this fixed. It's crazy. I don't know what it's doing, but I'm gonna try one more time to get the chat up here. I don't know if it's my computer or what's going on, but there is some weird stuff going on here. Somebody text me. Okay, so Bill says I'm live, and Rick says you can hear me. and see me. Good. All right. So I'm gonna keep going. Bear with me here for a second. I'm sorry. It's like I think maybe YouTube has a problem because their page is really slow to work. Okay, I'm almost there. Yeah, these pages are taking forever to open. Yeah, so it shows that we're live. See if Studio works now. Well, it looks like Studio is trying to open. Hey, we've got chat. Hey, all right. Ryan's in it. Ryan says, oh, good now. Okay. Perfect thumbnail for tonight. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ryan, it's the Iranians. So, and Ryan, I got to give you a shout out, man. Your color palette looks awesome on the truck. I can't wait to get color on that thing. It's going to be phenomenal. So anyway, yeah, so I wanted to talk about oiling tonight because I'm getting ready to fire up Dave and Kim's Chevelle. Finally. Just about have it all done. I'll go show you a couple pictures on that. Just have a couple things to finish up, but I got to put oil in it. Now this engine, hey, Mike's there. Hey, Mike, how you doing? So this engine we purchased from a friend of mine who got it from wow, brain fade. Rick Hendrick, the NASCAR guy. So he had a place up in North Carolina. They got to be buddies. He was doing some freelance work for them, probably for the car dealers, and he bought a whole bunch of crate engines, and this engine was one of them. So when we got it 7 years ago, it had already been sitting for a while. So we want to pre-lube this engine before we fire it up, and it's almost like it's almost kind of like a barn find engine. So let me switch to desktop now. Hopefully the sound will stay the same because I saw that there was an issue with that, and I think we've got that resolved. So hopefully the sound is staying the same. All right, this is the right thing. Let me go change the slides back. Sorry. Come on. Now my computer is definitely messing up because this is not advancing now. So let's just start anew. All right, so on our newer engines, the oil pump is part of the runs off the crankshaft. So we can't use the old school tools to prime the engine. So what I've been using is I have one of these oil accumulators, and what they do is you fill them up with 3 quarts of oil. You put air up in this portion, and there's a piston that floats in between. You open the valve, and it will, if the engine is running, it will balance the oil pressure with the pressure in the accumulator. If there's no pressure, it will push, the air pressure will push the oil into the engine. So that's how I prime the engine. I'll fill this up with 3 quarts of oil, push it into the main galley. When it's empty, fill it up again. Most LS engines hold 6 quarts, and that's how I pressurize the engine. Like Mellings, they make one of these pressure tanks that you fill up with oil, hit it with air, and then it pushes it in. It's a couple $100. I already had the accumulator, so just for me, it was just easier to do that. Stay with that. But this is a very good system for that they made specifically for these engines that have crank-driven oil pumps. This is a reverso electric pump you would usually use for doing oil changes on a boat. However, you could flip the lines around and it would push the oil into the engine. So you could use something like that also. That works pretty well. I've used one of those in the past. Again, a couple $100. Then I saw this, and I thought this is probably the best way to go. So what they've done here is they took a bucket, put a steel or aluminum plate up here, and they hooked a oil pump to it. So they take a Chevy oil pump, bolted it down to this plate with a fitting coming out the top, and run the drill on the oil shaft, and you can see the pickup is in the bottom. But really clever is they use this tube here for return. So let me go back to the other slide, and you can see here that they've got coming out of the oil pan, they're filling the bucket and then pushing it back in through the main galley. So you can sit there and prime the engine for as long as you'd like to with this method. Pretty clever idea. I believe I've got a couple old oil pumps that are new but never were installed. So I may make me one of these because I like the idea of recycling the oil through the engine a few times, especially on an engine that's been sitting dry for a long time. So that's one way of doing it. There's the pump. So you have to come up with some fittings, you know, one for the drain and one to go into the engine block as the for filling. Another way you can do it, if you pull the harmonic balancer off, they make this tool now that will grab the oil pump drive. So you can spin it. It's got a hex on the front of it, so you can spin the pump that way. But, you know, most of the time the engine's already assembled, so, you know, why would you want to take it back apart again? And traditional motors with the oil pump that's camshaft driven. Yeah, it is a pretty clever idea, isn't it, Ryan? Traditional engines with oil, you know, the oil pump runs off of the camshaft or a belt or something like that. They make these tools that they go in the block, and you can run them with a drill. That's another style for Chevy. The first one was for a Ford. I've seen somebody do this before where they took all the teeth off of the distributor shaft and then welded a shaft on the top and just stuck it in there and ran it. You know, that works, I guess. Here's the oil pump drive that you can buy to replace that. You can see how it fills this cavity. There's an oil passageway in a small block and big block Chevrolet, so you want something to block that cavity while you're priming. Like he said, he made a couple of those old distributors. I've seen a lot of guys make them like that. They do seem to work. For some reason, it goes to this picture and stops. So anyway, go back to the to this one here. So what you want to do, especially on a brand new engine, you want to prime it. You want to lubricate the engine completely before you fire it up. Now, if you've watched any of my assembly videos, you see I use an absorbent amount of assembly lube on all the bearing inserts and all the metal-to-metal contact surfaces, which that is good, especially for storage. You know, you want to put the motor in the car, get the torque converter bolted up and stuff like that. At least you've got some lubrication on everything. But you do want to prime it. And not, like I say, I like to prime the crap out of it. So now let's go back to a barn find engine. This is fine for a brand new engine. Now, for a barn find engine, as in you saw on the thumbnail, that was my '50 Chevy that I purchased a number of years ago. And when we got that engine got the car at the house, the motor was locked up. And the older, what they call stove bolt Chevy 6-cylinders, they don't have a crank bolt in the front of them, so you can't turn them over by normal conventional methods. So this is what I did with this engine. Now here's an engine the car had been sitting roughly from the previous owner since 1976, and this was in 2014, I believe. First, we went around. I sprayed a little PV blaster in each spark plug hole, and we took the valve cover off and lubricated all the rocker stands and pivots and valve springs and whatever I could spray in, through the valve springs onto the guides. But the motor was locked solid. Now, we drained the oil out, obviously, and it was clean, dirty. I mean, it was dirty, but it wasn't like nasty or anything like that. It was just old. So we were able to get underneath the car with a flywheel turner and turn the motor back and, well, tried to turn the motor back and forth, but it wouldn't budge. So what I did at that point was we got diesel fuel, and we pretty much poured 10 gallons of diesel inside the motor. What I was trying to do is get the oil up under the fuel up underneath the rings on the cylinder walls and stuff like that. We let it sit for a couple days. Went back and forth with the flywheel turner, and it was still solid. And it was like that for about 3 weeks. But eventually, it was actually the day I decided, if it doesn't turn now, the motor's coming out of the car. But we got back under there, and sure enough, it turned. And once it turned, I went ahead and drained all the diesel out of it. I drank, we took the spark plugs out and spun it over till all the oil, all the fluids came out, filled up with fresh engine oil. I primed it, and then I turned it with the flywheel turner, trying to find the spot where the rings were stuck, and I never could find that. So at that point, since we couldn't find a tight spot, so that to me meant that there wasn't any huge rust buildup in the cylinder walls. It was just stuck probably from oil caking and stuff. I mean, there was probably some surface rust, but nothing that was detrimental to the engine. We went ahead and put gas in it, fresh carburetor, ignition, put some fuel in it, and the car fired up and ran and didn't smoke. So really important to try to do those measures when you're starting up an engine for the first time. Whether it be new, obviously it turns over because you just assembled it, or if it's a barn find or a used engine or something that's been sitting, you definitely want to do the due diligence to try to get the motor to be free and lubricated before you try to start it up. So one of the things I like to do, see if this slide will work now. Yes, it does. So I like to use the Joe Gibbs driven oil. They did a really good amount of they got a good amount of zinc and stuff in the oil. Plus they've got some other additives to assist in ring seal. So on a brand new engine or an old engine, the rings have to reseat to the cylinder walls, so you want an oil that's going to help that. Some of your engine oils out there have all kinds of additives and stuff in them that make the oil slick and slippery. Well, that may be good for bearings inserts and stuff, but it's not going to aid in ring seal. You're going to get that extra Teflon or whatever ingredients they put in it that makes it super slick, and it's going to make the rings not seat into the cylinder walls. So you're going to have an issue with that. Oh, you know what? I'm talking here, but there's the picture I wanted you to see. So yeah, so that's the Joe Gibbs oil, and they make it in 30 weight. That's a 1550. They make it in a 40, and that's, you want to use the oil thickness that you think you're going to need to use when the engine is running. As we've talked in previous shows, bearing clearance between the journal and the insert is going to kind of denote how much oil pressure how thick the oil you want to run. So obviously, if it's a very tight tolerance engine like OEM motor, then you'd want to run the 10W30 BR or BR30. And then obviously, if you're running race clearances, or if the motor you think has got tons of miles on it and has a lot of it's worn in very good, then you'd probably want to run the BR40 or the BR15W50. So that's what I always try to do. It works real well. I see on my TV that the show is still showing, but I've lost the chat. For some reason, YouTube Studio shut the chat down. So, it says try again later. So I don't know what that means. So that's, those are what I like to do. Hopefully, maybe the chat maybe I'll be able to review the chat later on. Sorry if you guys are putting up questions I'm not able to answer. I don't know why we're having so many errors tonight, but it seems like that's what we have going on for us. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with the oil. I think that oil pump deal is pretty cool, the way they use that and able to circulate the engine oil back through. So looks like the studio is trying to catch up, but not doing a very good job. So that was kind of what I had to talk about there. Like I said, unfortunately, if you guys have questions, I'm not able to see them, so I apologize about that. So kind of a lot of times I make these tech things on stuff that's going on in the shop that week. It's kind of how it comes. So I talked to you guys last week about, I got the Vet Hawk back in the shop. I've been trying to put some tubing in there for the floors and stuff. I've been working on come up that we're not going to be able to use the C-brace. I'm going to have to put a conventional trans cross member in and build a pinion snubber style mount for the rear diff. So I've got some parts coming for that, and I'll show you guys some stuff on that when we get that going. But what's leading me to this is I pulled my tubing roll bar bender out of the corner, and I noticed that the cylinder was leaking oil, and sure enough I put some air to it and tried to cycle the ram, and it's just dumping hydraulic oil all over the place. So I thought that would be a good thing for tech show tonight, because a lot of you guys probably don't mess with hydraulic cylinders. So let me go ahead and switch back to the desktop. So there's not a very good picture of the cylinder. I just basically thought about it after I started taking it apart. This top collar is what holds the ram in, and you can see that there is a seal at the top here. It's that little black ring here. So hydraulic cylinders are really simple. If you have a hydraulic supply house in your area, you can just take all the seals and the components to them, and they can match up seals and stuff for you, and you can rebuild these things real easy. When I was working with Mike at DNR, we had a contract with Xfinity, Comcast, and we would rebuild all these big, huge cylinders for the bucket trucks. The first couple times we sent them out, and we'd have to wait a week or two for them to come back, and the truck is all down. You got the boom half tore apart and stuff. And I said to Doug, I said, these things aren't that bad. Let's go ahead and the next one comes in, let's do it ourselves. And we did. We come up with a way of getting them apart, and we took them apart. I ran the seals over to the local hydraulic hose supply. They had all the seals in stock. I had the cylinder back in the truck the same day. So anyway, let's go and I'll go and show you the inner workings of this stuff. It's not really that bad. So there's the top collar. That's what holds the cylinder, and obviously different cylinders have different containments. Most of your floor jacks and small rams, this is a 10-ton ram, will have a little brass or steel screw in. The bigger stuff like the boom trucks and stuff, they will have like a 1/4-inch square drive that actually hooks on, and you spin it around, and it works as like a spiral lock on a piston, but much larger in scale. Or they might just screw in like this. So there's different kinds. You just got to look at it and kind of determine what you need to do to get that part out. There's the seal, and you can see it was very brittle coming out. It actually broke, and it's hard to see in this picture. Let me see if I can. You can kind of almost see the groove that it sits in, but the rest of it is close to the ID of the, or the OD of the shaft, because it actually is a guide. That's what the cylinder slides on going in and out. And at the bottom, here is the sealing side of it, and all it is a lip seal. And they may have some bushings like this to take up this different space. Now on my like a floor jack or on a hydraulic ram with a single hose, you're only going to have fluid in one direction. That's pushing the ram out. On a in and out ram, like on a big hydraulic ram, like on a lift or something, you'll have two hoses going in. So then you'll have a seal going in both directions, one for the push out and one for the push back in. But very, very simple when you take them apart. They're very simple. Now on this hydraulic ram, this little loop sticking out here is for a return spring, because it doesn't have fluid pushing it back in. It has to have some way of retracting the ram, so they use a spring. So here's the cylinder, obviously in the vise, and this piece here rides on here. It's like a bearing to help guide the ram, so it doesn't, all the weight isn't on one direction or not. And you can see on the white paper there's a little snap ring. That snap ring is what holds this component together. And there it is with it all apart. So you've got these two pieces here that sit here, and all they're doing is taking up space. So this ram could be used in multiple different applications. They would take one or both of these out and put another one of these lip seals in here, and it would be a bi-directional ram. And then they have this little brass washer. That's just a support so that the seal has something to ride on, and this little snap ring is what holds it on that groove there. So that's it. That's all the mystery parts that are inside this thing. The biggest mysteries of these things is just figuring out how to get them apart. And this ring out, so at the very end of the ram there's this cap nut, a brass washer, and then the screw comes up from inside the spring, and that's what locks this side into the ram, or into the ram. And then back here where that loop is, there's a bolt that ties into the base of the cylinder, and that's what holds the spring. So when the ram goes out, the spring stretches, release the oil pressure, and the spring returns it all the way back in. So a very simple thing. Like I said, the biggest thing with these is just figuring out how to get it apart, and getting the parts to put it back together. If you look down, you can almost make out there's a black hole here. That's where this screw would go in to hold the coil spring. This is the base of the hydraulic ram. There's a little better picture of it. So obviously when I took the top collar off, the ram didn't want to come out because it's got the spring load. So I took this is where the hydraulic hose connects. I took this off, and sure enough, there's a screw. Pulled the screw out, then it released the ram. And then I was able to disassemble it after that. So here's the new seal. Look at it with the new color. That's what color the old one was before it got all messed up. And there's our washer that supports the seal. And you know what? I may have put that thing back together backwards. Good thing I'm showing you guys this, because I have to take mine back apart. That washer should have been on the bottom here to give this snap ring support to the seal, because the seal is soft. So I messed up on that. Always good to take a look at this stuff. It would have probably worked like that, but it wouldn't work for a long time. There's the new seal in the top. Now this is more just of a dust seal and a bronze guide to control that. That's getting ready to put it back in, which now we see it's backwards. So I will be taking it back apart. And then you just slide it down in the cylinder. You kind of work it a little bit, and it slides right back in the cylinder. And then put your collar back on the top. Tighten it down. And then there's your spring. And you can see it's a little short. So what I did was I took this piece of tubing and I cut it on an angle and I put the screw inside it. So that little angle let me work my way down into this loop and then stood the tubing up, which then made the screw straight. I could send a large screwdriver, thin but long, and start the screw and run it in tight. And when I was done, there's the screw back holding the spring. So very simple once you kind of take a look at them and see what is going on with, kind of figure out a way to work around, the different aspects of it. But after I got I had to go pick up the kit. It was $30 for the kit. This RAM, by the way, is $450 to buy a new one. So for $36 and about, even with taking these pictures and stuff, about 45 minutes of my time, the cylinder should be back in service. However, I do have to fix my little boo-boo there. But glad I showed you guys these pictures because now I see I made an error. So anyway, so that's a little tidbit on hydraulic cylinders. I'm going to just go back through these pictures again and just see if I can get a picture of it. There's the ram. I don't see the sleeve on there, but it must have been already on the bench. So I'll have to do some research on that and verify. But I'm pretty sure that I needed that support on the bottom of the seal because it's very pliable and it just has that little snap ring holding it in. So I believe I am correct that is assembled incorrectly, and I will be taking that back apart probably tomorrow and fixing it. So you got to pay attention to what you're doing. Even people that have been building these things for years, it's very easy to mess up, phones ringing and stuff like that. So I'll take it apart and fix it. But see somebody just not important. So anyway, so the chat's still not working, so I can't answer any of your guys' questions. I apologize about that. I will rewatch this and see if the chat works on YouTube and write down all the notes, and I'll have answers. We can go over some of this stuff next week. So on to Dave Chevelle. Like I said, I am probably a day away from having this thing to run. So we were talking about cooling systems recently, and so got me thinking about when I was putting his car together. I had to build a new fan shroud for it, and I didn't get these pictures put in order, so bear with me here. All right, so let me go back to the desktop, and again, hopefully the sound isn't messing up now. So here's the fan shroud I built for Dave's car. So what I usually do is I measure the core and I look at the way that the core is built. This is a Griffin, which they put a header panel on the top and the bottom. So very easy to attach to the header panel. So I just take all the measurements from it. So this is a 1/2 inch lip here. The part you can't really see is it goes up an inch and then it goes across. And I just measured header panel to header panel, which on this was 17 3/8. Then made the bends on the opposite end exactly the same. A 1 inch bend and a 1/2 inch going the opposite direction. Then I lay the fans out on the shroud and I take a Sharpie, and that's what this outer black line is. This is the outline of the outside of the fan shroud. And then those dots are where the mounting bolt holes go. Now, you don't want to cut it on that because that means the fan would have nowhere to sit. So what I do is I use fine line tape, and I put fine line tape around the inside edge of the Sharpie mark, and then I make a new Sharpie mark on the inside of the tape, and that's my cut line. So now I know that there's going to be a 1/4 inch between the outside of the fan shroud, where the fan shroud actually, the plastic shroud actually has something to bolt to, and that gives the shroud some strength. So there it is with it cut out. So just take a little jigsaw with an aluminum blade in it. Put a punch mark in the center and cut them. Follow the lines. Very simple. And there it is with the fans on, and they're bolted. Now you can see on the corners here, these little aircraft rivets. So because I made the shroud 1 inch tall, so it's going to have over a 1/2 inch between the fins and the fan. The ends are open because I don't have a sheet metal pot and pan brake, so I can't put that bend into the main shroud. Otherwise, I would just put a 1/2 inch border on both sides there and bend that. So what I do is I make a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch piece of strip of aluminum, make it look like an angle, and then I use aircraft rivets and rivet it to the main piece, and you can weld it. But I use 60 thousandths aluminum. It's hard to it's easy to weld, but it's hard to get a really pretty weld out of it. So I just go ahead and do the aircraft rivets. I think it'll look pretty cool anyway. And you can see down here where I've used 1032 bolts. It's hard to see on that side, but I used 4 1032 bolts to bolt it to the header panel. And on his car, I went ahead and put watertight 40 amp relays and 40 amp fuses and bolted that all to there. Now this harness here will get covered once it's mounted in the car. And but that's grounds and battery power, and then these 2 little gray wires are coming from the Terminator X to activate the fans. There you can see, there's the little strip that's on there with the aircraft rivets, and then I use some door edge molding to make a seal so that the aluminum isn't rubbing against the tanks of the radiator, so we don't have to worry about longevity of cutting through the tanks. And it seals it off real good. So now all the air coming through these 2 small fans has to come through the core. And you can see we have really good coverage on the shroud. So I'm sure that there's not going to be any issues with this thing cooling. I had one more picture here. Let me see this one. They weren't in order. Oh, so here's the fans sitting on it before I cut it, and you can see the fine line tape and stuff like that. Like I said, these weren't in order, so this was before I cut it out with the saw. And there was one more picture here, and oh, there's our dimensions. So you can see the 1/2 inch. You can see the header panel of the radiator, and it's got a 1/2 inch rise there, and there's no fins behind this, so you can drill into this safely. So that's what I did. Drilled into there. I put nut inserts in, so I got a 1/2 inch flange, and then I got a 1 inch, and then you can see that I have over a 1/2 inch of opening or gap between the fan shroud and the core. So even these corners, the fan's going to draw air out of all that. So let me go back through these. So there's back to the final product, and you can see the coverage. The fans actually overlap the core a little bit, but that way I was able to get 2 14-inch fans on this shroud, so we're moving a ton of air. You go back to the live show where we were talking about airflow. I like to have over 3,000 CFM, and these fans are 2,400 a piece, I believe. I'd have to go back. We purchased these a long time ago, but these are one of the better Spall fans. I like the Spall fans because it's an OEM supplier, so they got a very robust motor. They can run, and you don't have to worry about them going bad. So that's just a little, going back over our cooling system discussion from before. You kind of see how I do that. I built a shroud similar to that for Mike's Trans Am, which unfortunately the Champion radiator that's in that car is still not sufficient, even with the good fans and a good shroud. So now I have a Griffin coming for that car. It should be here in 2 weeks, and when I get that one done, if I have to build a new shroud or reuse that one, I'll go ahead and show you guys some pictures of that too, so you can get an idea of how that all works out and stuff. So that's pretty much all the stuff we had working. Oh, I got some pictures I can show you too. I forgot about that. These aren't great pictures because I'm still in the finalizing stages on the wiring on Dave's car. So again, I didn't get these in order. So where are we at here? Here we are. So you guys can remember there's the instrument cluster that we were putting in his car. These are just some old slides I had going back over. Like I said, I didn't have them in order. Back of the cluster. Some of the components and stuff that we had put in there. There's the rubber boots I use for the doors because the car has electric windows and electric door locks. There was with the AC, and this is beginning stages when we were first starting to wire up the car. There's the electric switches. They used your door window crank, and that you go up and down on the crank, and that's what opens and closes the window. This was all stuff that was done. There's the stereo system and the battery in the trunk. Just kind of give you an idea how I laid everything out in that thing. Going over some of the wiring stuff that we did. I kind of showed you guys all this stuff. This is all a lot for my wiring video I got coming up. I should go back over these. These are my spreadsheet that I build that gives me all the circuits and where all the terminations are. So left front headlight, center core support, right front headlight, firewall where your wipers are. Obviously you got wires going to the starter, and then basically there'd be a line across here, and then this is under the dash. Dimmer switch, terminator, vintage air. So basically I just kind of draw this out so that when I'm putting the harnesses together, I can kind of determine where all that stuff goes. And that's the stuff in the trunk. So now, this is the wiring harness in the car. I'm not putting covering under the dash. I'm leaving it all exposed. I've put, it's hard to see in these pictures. Yeah, you can't see them at all. But I put zip tie holders across the bottom of the inside of the dash. I use panel bond to hold them up, so that's what's going to hold the harnesses up. And this is a aluminum panel behind the cowl that goes behind the instrument cluster. So this is our control box for our Dakota Digital. And then on the other side of the column, steering column, we got our Terminator X. And on the back side, we got our Detroit Speed wiper control and our Dakota Digital shift indicator that goes in. This car's got all the bells and whistles. This harness here is just laying out. I kind of pushed it to the side. That's going to connect to the back of the dash cluster for all the stereo and all that. Here's a set of dash speakers, our defroster vent hoses for the AC. So all that's up there. There's a picture of the holders glued to the bottom of the dashboard. This is looking up. So that way all the harnesses are running all the way across the top of the dash. So when you look under the dash from under the car, you're going to see very little wiring. It'll be all up high, and once I get everything all tied in permanent zip tied, it'll all be fairly well organized. Hopefully it'll make sense. I don't know what's the next picture. Okay, so this is videos. So basically that's some of the pictures I wanted to show you. I don't know if I got one. I have the battery connected right now, and I don't see. I was trying to get some pictures of the blue interior LEDs, but it's all blue inside, so it doesn't really show up real good right now. Plus, I had lighting on. If I had all the lights out in the shop, it would have showed better. But I'll have that stuff next week, because I should have the car running. I'll have the startup on here, and you're going to go ahead and prime the engine. That was the whole thrust of why I wanted to start the show off with pre-lubing the engine. So we're going to pre-lube this engine, and then when we go to crank it, it'll already have oil pressure. Everything will be lubricated, and everything should be good on it. So I'm going to have to go ahead and where I'm at right now is I'm putting charging lugs underneath the rear bumper, because the battery, from you seen in the pictures, is in the package tray hump in the trunk. So you're not going to be able to get to the battery, because the interior, the trunk is going to have a full interior when it's all done. You won't see any of that. So obviously, to get to the battery, it's going to be a little bit of work. So what I do on a car where I put the batteries in the trunk is I put charging lugs with heavy cables going to them. So one, if the battery was dead, you could jump start it through that. And two, you can hook up your trickle charger or a battery charger and keep the battery maintained when the car is in storage. Just makes it real simple. You don't have to get in and mess with the battery or all the interior panels unless you're going to do a battery swap. So it just makes it very convenient for the owner down the road. I try to think of how can I make this so it's easy to work on, and you don't, Mike can attest this, and everybody else that's worked on OEM cars. Sometimes engineers do shit to the cars, sorry for my language, that you go, what the heck were they thinking? So obviously now I'm the engineer building this car, so I want to go over all this stuff the way I would do the car, so it's easy to work on. So that's the way I do my design. That's why I hang all the wiring harness at the top of the dash. So when you look up from underneath, everything's not right in your face. You can decipher, okay, here's the back of the radio. If I want to get to the back of the radio, my turn signal switch, neutral safety, all that stuff is going to be well exposed and nothing really around it hindering. You're not going to have all these wiring harnesses jumbled up. If you have to get to the main harness, all you have to do is remove the steering column or lower it, pull the dash face off, unplug the cluster, and you can get to everything under the dash. So it just makes it really simple to work on, in my eyes anyway. And of course, when I'm done, I give all the paperwork to the car owner and in a big Ziploc bag, and that way they have all this stuff. So they're going to have all of my paperwork. They're going to have the paperwork from Painless that has the instructions on how the harnesses are assembled, and all the circuit numbers. And then they're going to have my spreadsheet that's going to show where all the wires go to, where they terminate to. So between those two, you can decipher the entire wiring schematic of the car. And then all of our extra components that aren't part of the Painless. So you got Holley Terminator system, which is this is a Terminator X, so it's got trans control in it. And then you've got all the Dakota Digital. So all that paperwork is all in there. And I've highlighted and put notes on all those papers as to how all that stuff interweaves with the Painless harness. So at the end of the day, God forbid you're on the road somewhere, or down the road, whatever, if there's an electrical issue, you should be able to go through all those notes and get a pretty good idea of how everything was laid out. And then all you have to do is, because the painless harness, all the wiring is labeled, you'll be able to just go to the wires, read the labeling on it, and you'll be able to kind of figure it out pretty quickly what's going on. So that's the best engineered way I can think of to do it. Always be willing to hear somebody else's ideas if they got some, but I mean, it's worked for me in the past pretty well. Knock on wood, I haven't had to go back into any of the cars I've wired for any specific reason, unless we're adding on to stuff that, adding more components to it. But in the case of Dave's car, I think we pretty much got the bases covered. We got, like I said, we got the power window controls in the doors. Plus, I put a set of switches in the center of the dash, so you don't have to reach across the car to open the passenger door window. Power locks are on that switch panel, and the exhaust cutouts are on that switch panel. We've got LED lighting throughout the car, including under the engine bay. So when he goes to a car show, all he has to do is turn the dimmer switch on, and all the interior lights and the under hood light will all light up. And being LED, you should be able to let that stuff run for hours without having to worry about running the battery down. So right now there's only 6 bulbs in the whole car anyway, so it should take very minimal, probably wouldn't even take 1 amp of draw. So that should work out real well. And it's got stereo with we got 6 speakers in the car, 7 because we have a subwoofer in the trunk, amplifier, 5-channel amp. So car's kind of got all the bells and whistles in it. So that's where I'm at now, is I'm getting ready to install the radiator and the hoses. Tomorrow I'll have the rest of my Gates power grip heat shrink clamps, so I'll be able to put all that stuff together. And then I'll be able to do a system test on everything, make sure the windows operate, the switches on the dash operate, calibrate the Dakota Digital, because we have the BIM that has to be calibrated. That's the CAN bus that talks to the Terminator X and to the Dakota Digital. So all of the sensor information for the Dakota Digital, speedometer, tachometer, water temp, oil pressure, fuel pressure, air-fuel ratio, transmission temperature, all that will come through the CAN bus from the Holly to the Dakota Digital. So there's not redundant wires with extra sensors. Anybody who's worked with the LSs knows that there's very little places you can put extra sensors. So it just makes it so much cleaner. And then, we have the park neutral switch. So on the Dakota Digital, so when you operate the shifter, every time you move the shifter, one of the LCD screens will change from whether it's a clock or odometer or trip odometer. When the shifter is moving, it'll switch and tell you what position the shifter is in. And then once the shifter is in a spot for, I think it's 5 seconds without moving, then it will revert back to whatever that screen was showing before. So if you shift it down into 1, it'll switch and say first gear, and then you leave in first gear, you drive down the road, it'll revert to odometer or clock or whatever. Shift into second, it'll revert back, tell you second. Then after a couple seconds, revert back. Third, drive, neutral, reverse, park. So it gives you, while you're shifting the car, it gives you a display on the dash what position the shifter is in. So that has to be programmed. And then, of course, we have to put a program in the Terminator X. And I'm probably going to go through all that, probably try to get some video on that. But yeah, so once I get that done, make sure all the stereo channels work and all that. Then windows, locks, all that. I already know the headlights, taillights work. I know the high beams work. We got LED halos that are going to be running lights. That's all wired and it's all been tested already. So once we get through all that, then we'll go through the stages of getting the engine ready to fire. Put 5 quarts in the transmission. Transmission's a brand new unit, never been fired, so we put 5 quarts in. Now it's going to take 12 to be full, but you can only, the pan can only hold so much, and then it will, if you overfill the pan, then it gets up into the clutch baskets and planetaries and such, and there's not much room up there, so if you keep filling it up, it will just come out the overflow vent. So the idea is 5 quarts, put it in, prime the engine, then crank the engine over, even maybe start it, and then kill it, because then you can check your transmission. Go ahead and put more fluid in. You can get another 4 quarts in. Great. That way you're up to 9. So in a 4L80, like I said, it holds 12. So at that point, we got 9 in it. Now we can go ahead and start the engine and leave it running, because now we have enough oil in the transmission that it's not going to suck the pan dry and then aerate. So, because the converter is going to be spinning, the front pump's going to be spinning, so you want those pieces lubricated. You don't want them to run them dry, because you will damage the those components. So once you got it running, then you can go back and start checking your fluids. Make sure the coolant's topped off. I use a vacuum filler on the cooling system, so I know it will be completely full. And then we can go to the transmission, start topping, working the transmission up to full. And then by then the motor has temp. Now we can go back and start doing some of our adjustments with the Holley terminator system. We will look at the air-fuel ratio, see if the map needs to be adjusted. We'll look at throttle position, IAC position, and start calibrating some of that stuff. And then keep working on that until she's ready for a road test. So we're moving along with all that, and getting close to it done. So hopefully it's going to be done. I see my wife's home. She's actually worked on a Tuesday for a change. Her schedule's been messed up for a while. So so I'm glad we got this off tonight. I apologize that I was not able to see the chat. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. YouTube's actually, I'm looking at the studio right now, and it's all the way back to showing the radiator, so it's way behind us, and of course it disconnected the chat for some reason. So it does show that we had 34 views on here tonight, and we have 5 concurrent, so that's great to hear. So if you guys have left chat notes in the chats, I'm going to go back through the video later, and I'll write down all your chats, and we'll go over that stuff next week. Thank you for putting up with all this mess. I don't know what happened, but I don't know. Hopefully the volume worked good tonight, so it didn't change when I went to desktop. I don't know. That was getting some reverb from something. I don't know what it was, but it was horrible. I apologize, and I guess there was a couple of shows that it did that. I'm really sorry about that. So with that, we should have that fixed. Let's see what other news we had. The channel hit almost. We're at 225,000 views, so we're getting close to 250,000 views. That's great. Watch time is continuing to rise, so that's great. I need to get back, once I get the shop caught up here a little bit, I need to get some more videos out, but everything's moving in a forward progress. I do need to start working with my buddy Nick. We're going to work on getting some shirts done, and he's ended up switching jobs, and now he's a service writer at one of the local Schumacher dealerships, so he's been a little inundated, but we're going to get working on that. I want to get the merch going, and I decided that we would try to handle it ourselves rather than use one of the ready-to-print companies, because the shirts were just going to be too expensive. They were going to be $24 a shirt, and we were going to get $1 out of that $24. So I don't want you guys spending your hard-earned money on merch to feed some company we don't even know. They're not even part of the group. I'd rather sell the shirts for 15 bucks, and put a couple dollars back into the channel so we can get some more equipment. I need to work on this this live show feed, see if we can get this working a little better. I don't know what the issue there is, but I'm going to work on that. I've been looking at getting another a telephoto lens for my DLR, so that when we're at car shows and car events, I can get more up-to-date action shots. But even use those that camera lens is $1,000, so I got some savings to do to put that stuff together. We have gotten our second check from YouTube on the channel for the views and for all that. So that was another $100 check. So that's $200 now for the year. So that's all that money is going back in for equipment and stuff. I'm not taking a dollar out of any of this money from the merch or from YouTube for advertising. That's all going back in for more equipment to hopefully serve you guys better. Better equipment for filming the videos, better equipment for the live feeds, better camera equipment. I want to get some more GoPros so that when next time we go racing, we can have multiple angles. We should be racing the Smurf. I'm sure I mentioned it last week. The Smurf is back, and I'm getting ready to do the final chassis setup and do some wiring in the car. So we're going to be at Mike Hill's year-end finale, same race in South Georgia we were at last year, and we're doing another small block shootout. Right now there's 6 cars entered, and none of the cars that we ran last year. So how do you like that? All the guys that we've been racing last year at Mike Hill's and at Steel, none of those guys have signed back up to race against us. So at least we have 5 other people that are out ready to race, and they are looking for at least 2 more, so they're trying to make an 8-car field out of it. But maybe Disrespectful and Baby Mama and Themo will decide to come back out. I don't remember the name of the truck that Jamie Wells was driving. I'm sure I've heard that they're getting that thing all back together. And there was another S10 that was at that event that blew up the motor. I've heard that they possibly have their engine back. So maybe these guys will jump in. Let's make these small block shootouts really worthwhile to do. And if they want to do some grudge racing, we're up for that too. So so that'll be I think November 1st and 2nd, which it's the last week, right after Halloween. I think Halloween is for looking over. So Halloween is on a Thursday, so that Mike Hill's race is going to be October 31st, November 1st and 2nd. And the small block shootout will be on the 2nd. So, if anybody's in the Georgia area, come on down, check us out live. But I'd like to have a couple GoPros so we can do multiple angles on that. So, anyway, hit the like button. The algorithm will thank us with that. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed, if you're not a YouTube, if you don't have a YouTube account, set up an account. All you need is a Gmail account. You may just be able to use any account, actually any email. There's no fees for it. You're not going to get a bunch of junk in your mail or anything like that. But once you create an account, you can go to the chats and join the chat. If you're not a YouTube member, you're not allowed to use the chat. So that's good. You can then send questions to me while we're having the live shows, and you can leave comments when you watch videos, whether it's one of my videos or somebody else's. There's plenty of good content on here. And then if you are a member, subscribe to the channel. Again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. The only thing subscribing will do is help the channel, because the more subscribers we have, the more base we have. The algorithm will then try to put our videos out to more people, because the more people join, they say, oh, it must be something good going on. The algorithm doesn't actually look at the videos. It has no idea. It looks at people's comments and reviews and viewership, how many times they view it or how long they view it, and that's how the algorithm rates whether the video is good or bad. So all that stuff helps. And if you are a subscriber, you can ring that bell on the main page, and that's going to then give you an instant notification if you want instant notifications when I put something up. And then, of course, on the main page there's a community center where sometimes I'll put up some information, pertinent information, or just a shout out or something like that. So all those things are good to do. I hope you guys all look into doing that if you're not already subscribed. The guys that are subscribing and already hitting the like button and stuff, thank you guys. It all helps, and it's not. This isn't something that we're going to make a lot of money out of. All I want to do is be able to create better content. As I've said in the past, I just want all my knowledge to be on this channel so that people in their garages building their project cars can use my resources to get them to help them finish their cars or finish a project or figure out how to do something so they can move stuff along. So anyway, enough of me rambling on. Thank you guys all for coming on the show, and we'll be live next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, hopefully without all this technical stuff going on. And we'll see if we can get some videos out, and we should have Dave's car running. We should have some video on the live show on his car running. So with that, I'm going to tell you guys good night. Let me get the try to get the music going here again. There we go. All right, guys. So I'll see you all next week. See ya.